Hi guys, I'm Marie,
And I'm Maddie.
and we are here today recording Lost in the Woods. Welcome back. For the record, Maddie did make it onto the airplane without any kind of identification,
You don't need one to fly domestically.
apparently. And now she's yawning. Today we are bringing you the case of Carl Landers. And Carl Landers would go missing on Mount Shasta in 1999, and his disappearance has mystified experienced mountaineers for more than 20 years. Mount Shasta stands at 14,179 feet and is the second highest peak in the Cascades, and it gets about 59 inches of snow every year. This is also in California, by the way. So, for comparison, here in Washington, we have Mount Rainier, which is about 14,411 feet. So, almost exactly the same height. But Mount Rainier gets about 670 inches of snow per year. And that's just an average. That number has actually been double at least once for snowfall. So, California mountain, less snow, but one of the bigger, more dangerous mountains for California. Shasta is the fifth highest in California, and it's located in the Shasta Trinity National Forest. It is a very popular destination for hiking, camping, and basically all recreational activities. It is also referred to as White Mountain. It is a potentially active volcano and is on the southern end of the Cascade Range in Siskiyou County, California. Now, when I say potentially active, it has erupted once every 800 years for the last 10,000 years. Also, about 10,000 to 15,000 people on average climb Mount Shasta every year.
So, Carl was born in Chicago, but had moved to California, and he was 69 years old. Him and his wife lived in a nice neighborhood in Orinda, not far from San Francisco. He was 5'9" and 150 pounds. He was an engineer that worked as a salesperson for a heating and air conditioning company. He was an experienced climber, hiker, runner, and was in very good shape, and he ran every single morning. He'd even won the lottery to run in the 100th anniversary of the Boston Marathon.
Which is kind of a big deal, actually.
And he did the 26 miles in 5 hours and 30 minutes.
So, not too bad.
He was determined to summit the highest peaks in every county of California. In May of 1998, he would attempt Mount Shasta. So in this attempt, he did fail, but he was determined to summit the mountain.
So, on May 25 of 1999, so a year later, he would make his second attempt, but something would go terribly wrong. Carl set out along with two other climbers. We have Milton Gaines and Barry Gilmore. Milton was 64 and Barry was 70. The trio actually met through the running club that they all ran in. And when Carl heard that Milton and Barry were making plans to climb Mount Shasta, he asked if he could join them. I was actually reading about this case in one of the Missing 411 books, and it actually says that Barry described Carl saying he wasn't an outstanding athlete, but he was a good runner. He said that he had gone scuba diving with Carl and he wasn't the best swimmer, that he had gone skiing with him and he wasn't the best skier, but he enjoyed the challenge of sports. So obviously, Carl was experienced and tried a lot of things, but maybe just wasn't the best at any of them. Now, Milton, the other friend, he was actually with Carl on his first attempt to climb Mount Shasta. And he was described as being in excellent physical shape.
So now their plan was to hike part of the way up, spend the night before summiting, and then heading back down. So it's about 6 miles to summit and about 7,000 feet in elevation. I wouldn't want to do that. Fuck that.
I've done that.
I could not. No. That just sounds 7,000 feet of elevation gain in 6 miles.
Yeah. So that's what you
No.
have to really consider, right? Like 6 miles maybe doesn't sound like that much, but when you're doing 7,000 feet in 6 miles, that is crazy terrain and crazy steep.
I want to kill my mom when we do like 3,000 feet of elevation.
Yeah, Maddie prefers like the 2,000 and under.
So for our Washingtonians, I prefer like a Mount Pilchuck
Mm-hmm.
type of hard hike.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit harder than that I can deal with.
Yeah, you did it.
But like
Gothic Basin was harder than that.
like a double Mount Pilchuck,
Oh, this is more than that.
yeah. I'm not having a good time.
All right. Now, the men stayed in a nearby hotel on Monday the 23rd to ensure their early start. 4 a.m. kind of early. Your favorite, Madison.
My favorite.
Getting up at 4 a.m. The group would pack up their gear, including crampons, ice axes, and they would drive to Bunny Flat Trailhead, which sits at about 6,800 feet. And this trailhead would have snow on the ground. It was described by Barry and Milton as having 10 to 12-foot snowdrifts. So even where they're starting, we're already in snowy terrain. They would first hike the 4 miles to Horse Camp, which is an old cabin owned by the Sierra Club. And from there, they would head to 50/50 Plateau, which is about 600 feet below Lake Helen, which was a popular stopping point for climbers to rest at before their final push to the summit. So a lot of climbers will go all the way to Lake Helen and they will camp there. But the trio decides to stay at 50/50 Plateau. Because by the time they had reached Horse Camp, before even getting there, Carl was already not feeling well. So Carl is a little bit like Maddie, and he struggled with altitude sickness.
Yeah.
Not fun, you guys.
No.
Lake Helen, which is just above where they're at 50/50 Plateau, sits at 10,443 feet. So they are pretty close to 10,000 feet by the time they get to 50/50 Plateau. Carl must have known that this was going to be a problem because remember, he has summited this mountain before.
Or attempted.
Or attempted to. So he was taking Diamox for elevation sickness. And for most people, this drug can be pretty effective, but there can be a lot of side effects. So listen to the list of side effects here: dizziness, lightheadedness, increased urination, blurred vision, dry mouth, drowsiness, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Now, a lot of those symptoms actually sound like symptoms of elevation sickness. So I think I would rather just have elevation sickness.
That just sounds like the side effects are the medication not working. Is what that sounds like to me.
That's what I'm wondering.
Because that is literally, blurry vision, dry mouth, drowsiness, loss of appetite, nausea, vomiting. That all. Trust me, that all goes along with elevation sickness.
Yeah. So before they even got to 50/50, Carl had already had to duck behind multiple trees to use the bathroom because he was not doing good. Now, at 50/50 Plateau, they dig in their 3-person tent to protect it from the snow and the winds. And Carl does get up multiple times in the middle of the night because he has diarrhea. And the wind is blowing and it is freezing cold. The wind would actually reach over 70 miles per hour. Can you imagine trying to use the bathroom outside in 70-mile-per-hour winds? Especially when you're shitting yourself.
No.
Oh my gosh. So in the early morning hours, the wind is so bad that they actually see climbers coming down from Lake Helen like abandoning their summit. And they decide that they're going to hunker down and see what happens with the weather. Within a couple hours, climbers are starting to head back up because it does clear up. So Carl, Barry, and Milton, they decide that they're going to head to Lake Helen and see what's happening with the weather. Now, they have not decided if they're going to summit this day. Their plan is kind of more, maybe we go to Lake Helen, we camp there, and we plan our summit for the following day. Or if it looks good, then they might head up and do the summit. So they're kind of keeping it open right now.
Yeah, so Carl's still not feeling well, and he, probably is exhausted, dehydrated, has elevation sickness.
Right. So Milt and Barry are packing up the campsite.
Yeah.
And Carl is kind of just like standing there, staring into space. So Milton tells him, hey, why don't you get going and we'll finish packing up camp and we'll meet you at Lake Helen.
So they would not take all their gear with them, as this was more of a scouting mission. But what are they going to do if they want to continue on and go back for their stuff?
No. So it's like their tent, like their gear that they don't need to summit. They would leave behind at 50-50. So, and a lot of people do this on bigger mountaineering or summit climbs where they will stash their pack or they will leave behind the non-essential things so that they don't have to carry that weight up to the very top.
We saw some guy stash his pack in California when we were in Joshua Tree.
We did, yeah. But that was to climb through a crevice.
Yeah. It was different, but... So it was only about 650 feet to the lake from the campsite, and it was at a slightly higher elevation.
In an article that I read in Timberland Trails, a group that summited Mount Shasta actually said that they were told by a ranger that they should leave no later than 2 a.m. for their summit in order to make it back to the lake by noon. This would help them avoid the danger of avalanche and keep them from having to dig their way through softer snow later in the day. Because as the day goes on, the snow gets a lot softer and it's a lot harder to negotiate. So if the trio decides to try to summit this day, they're already leaving too late.
Yeah.
So Milton and Barry are packing up, and they said that Carl was just standing there staring. And they said that he seemed cold. So Milt told him, maybe you should start walking and we'll finish packing up camp and then catch up to you. So Carl heads off to Lake Helen. Now, Milton and Barry watch him disappear around the curve in the mountain, and he is wearing 2 to 3 layers of clothing. He had on a rust-colored jacket, ski pants, his boots, and crampons. And he also had his pack, which had some gear and his food and water in it. Milton and Barry would leave about 30 minutes after Carl when they were done packing up camp. And like we said before, they would leave their larger gear, heavier gear at 50-50 for this trek up to the lake. Now, things get a little hairy here because halfway to Lake Helen, Barry starts to not feel well. And he would actually decide to return to 50-50, pick up the tent, and head back to the car. Which seems crazy to me because they hadn't even decided if they were going to summit on this day, but he must be not feeling good to be bailing at this point. This leaves Milton and Carl with no other option but to summit on this day because now they don't have a tent. So now the option is to summit and come back down or get to Lake Helen and then everybody comes back down. Milton agrees and he heads off to Lake Helen and Barry heads back to 50-50. So right now we have all 3 climbers separated from each other. We have Carl maybe at Lake Helen. We have Milton on his way to Lake Helen, and we have Barry headed back to the car. I don't like that. This is not an ideal situation. Please don't separate.
When Milton reached Lake Helen, he found no sign of Carl. But there was a ranger there, and he asked the ranger if he'd seen anyone come through, which he replied that he'd only seen one man pass camp and head up. Milton set off to try to catch up with Carl. So as he got close to the man, he realized that this man was going way too fast to be Carl, and he turned back and asked the ranger if he was the only one that he had seen. And I assume the ranger said yes. And
Correct.
so as Milton realizes that this man obviously isn't Carl, he heads back down to see if he can find Carl, because maybe he missed him, he headed back down. Like, he doesn't know. He's just confused.
He's confused, yeah.
So it's now 5 p.m. when Milton gets back to the campsite, and Carl is nowhere to be found.
But Carl's gear that he's responsible for carrying back down is still there. So Barry's gone, the tent is gone, which is what Barry was carrying, and then Milton and Carl's stuff is still at 50-50.
And Barry took the tent.
Yeah. That was one of the things that I didn't understand, is why Barry chose to take the tent back to the car.
Why nobody else had a tent, and if
they had one 3-person tent.
Yeah, what the fuck, Barry?
And maybe Milton and Barry had a conversation about it before he decided to take the tent. Like a conversation about, hey, with me not feeling good, with Carl not feeling good, we should probably call it good and head back to the car once we collect Carl. So basically at this point, we have Carl going missing in a 650-foot stretch that was not known for crevasses, that had very little tree cover, and not really anywhere that somebody could hide. So after a while, Milton decides that he's going to hike back to Bunny Flats. And this is so that he can notify the county sheriff and get some help. Now, he did leave Carl's gear at the campsite in case he returned. And you guys, it's like very cold too. So Carl at this point doesn't have a tent. I don't know what kind of survival gear he has, but not looking good.
So the search would start early morning of the 26th. The county sheriff would search on a grid pattern using the National Guard helicopters, and these helicopters are equipped with infrared or flare. Which, have they even ever found anybody via these things? I would be curious, because
we just talked about that in our last episode.
I know.
It can't see through anything. So the subject has to be in an open area for it to pick them up.
So basically it's like completely useless in like
tree
majority of places that people go missing.
100%. Doesn't that make you feel better?
So Milton and Barry hiked back to Lake Helen in search for their friend, but no luck. They did not find him. And when they passed 50-50, Carl's gear sat alone in the snow.
Yeah.
And ground searchers would include ski patrol, U.S. Forest Rangers on foot and horseback. So Shasta mountain guides and volunteers from surrounding counties, and also runners from the club that the men had all been a part of. Another weird thing is they found no footprints in the snow leading off trail.
Right, because there's so much snow on the ground that they couldn't find anything that indicated that a single person had walked away from the trail.
So the base camp for the search was at Shasta Schoolyard, but had to be moved to the airport as volunteers, as there were too many people for the school.
Mm-hmm.
So they needed a bigger building, bigger place. So a helicopter pilot flew professional climbers up to the summit so that they could search from the top down.
Which is genius. And we saw this in the Sam Sayers case, although I think they had to hire a private helicopter for that. But we've seen this in other searches where people will get dropped off so that they don't have to exhaust themselves getting up to the search point.
To search, yeah. And they would never find Carl or any piece of his gear.
Not one item. Nothing. So Carl is just gone. And there doesn't seem to be anywhere that he could be hiding either. but we're going to talk about that in a second. So, Grizz Adams was the lead SAR, and he told David Pilates in an interview, in 35 years, I've never had this happen to me. We were all over that mountain. He was not on the mountain. We brought canines in. They didn't pick him up. We flew around it. We dropped guys on the summit. They came down all sides. They couldn't find him. They talked to people who were on the mountain. They didn't see him. There's snow around the path where he was, and nobody went outside of the path. When asked what he thought happened to Carl, he said, that's the $1,000,000 question. He either went up or in, but he's not on it. Now, Grizzly has been a part of over 400 search operations, and Carl, along with one other, are the only two that have produced no sign whatsoever of the missing person. That would be Carl and a woman named Rosemary Kunst. And we're going to talk about Rosemary a little bit on a mini that we're going to do on Patreon. But it's very strange that out of the hundreds of searches that he's done, Carl and Rosemary's are the only two that have bothered him because no sign could be found of either hiker.
Which is crazy. So his friend Milton does go to 3 different psychics, and one of them says that he's in a body of water. One says a crevice, and the other one says that he would not be found for a very long time.
Well, I mean, I guess they all could be accurate since he hasn't been found.
Yeah. So Milton would later state that he believed that something odd must have happened. I think he's in the lake.
But nobody saw him at the lake. How did he end up in the lake? When he got to the lake, there were a ton of people there. 50 to 100 people around Lake Helen at the time that Carl went missing.
I don't know.
So why did nobody see him? So when looking at Mount Shasta and the area that Carl went missing in, it's hard to imagine them not being able to find his body because they're really above the tree line at this point. There's not places where he could be hiding. There's not places where he could have fallen. There's really nothing but open mountain and snow. Could Carl have been disoriented and continued an unlikely track from where he was last seen?
Yes.
Yeah, of course he could have. But even in the grid searching below the tree line, they've never found anything either. And like I said, there was 50 to 100 people around the Lake Helen area at the time that he went missing, and not one person remembers seeing him. Locals actually say that it's like the mountain opened up and swallowed him. So one thing to consider, was he even ever there? That is a question that obviously authorities have to ask, right? Like, was he ever there? Because they were unable to find any witness that had seen Carl that day at any point. So, could Carl have chosen to disappear and his friends were helping him? Could something like that be afoot? Maybe, I don't know. That would be quite the secret to keep for 20 years.
I can do it.
Well, of course, but we're good secret keepers. Of course, we can do it. The thing that made searchers probably the most consider this theory is that no dog was ever able to pick up Carl's scent at all. Like his scent was not, they were not able to find it. But I don't know how crazy that is up in the mountains. Like we talked about before, it was really windy the night before and early in the morning. That would make it a lot harder to follow a scent. He had gear left behind, but did he have clothing left behind where they could have gotten the dogs a really good scent in the first place without it being confused with Barry or Milton's? I mean, maybe that's why they were confused, the dogs.
Do old people really smell that different?
Yes, Madison. I don't want to know what Madison considers old. Oh, one thing to think about. I wonder if Carl had life insurance. Maybe his wife was in on it. Maybe they actually killed Carl altogether and he never went on the mountain.
Or Milton and the wife, and then Barry was just a witness, and he was like, I'm fucking out of here.
Maybe. Now, one of the things that I think could be a possibility is maybe he was somehow covered by a snowdrift or a rock slide or something that's making it impossible to find his body. Because if there's no place for him to fall into, right? There's no crevasses in this
Possibly.
area.
But don't you think they would have seen a fresh snowdrift or rock
Well,
slide?
I think a fresh snowdrift would be really hard to see. Or
yeah, but then his body would have been found when the snow melted.
If the snow has melted. I'm sure it has, yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, why has no evidence been uncovered as the weather changes or the snow melts or whatever happens? If he's under rocks, he could never be found.
Yeah, but you'd see the
But
rocks
that
over
would
the
be
snow.
obvious. Yeah, I totally agree. There are bears and coyotes at lower elevations on this mountain. So what if Carl was disoriented, suffering from dehydration, elevation sickness, maybe a little hypothermia? What if he just headed in the wrong direction, ended up at a lower elevation, and then it would be harder to find his body at a lower elevation?
Just black bears and coyotes. No, maybe mountain lion.
They might eat him after he died.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Another thing is Carl could have needed to use the bathroom and wandered away from the trail for that reason, right? Because we know he's having issues. So maybe that's why he went off trail in the first place and then got disoriented, maybe tried to head for the car, maybe couldn't find his way back. I mean, I don't know, but there are a lot of people on the mountain right now, which could make him seek out a more private area.
Yeah, true. He might have gone, especially if he has fucking diarrhea.
Ugh. We also have another hiker who in June of 1999, so like a month later, 32-year-old Renee Arnold, who was a novice climber. He was really more of a skier, but had recently gotten into mountain climbing. He would go missing on Mount Shasta. And he had been climbing with 3 other climbers, and all of them reached the summit in the afternoon and would camp at about 13,000 feet before descending the following day. Renee was in the lead, heading down, when the other 3 lost sight of him. Search and rescue would be called in, and he would be found the following day, which it appeared that he had slipped on ice and fell about 100 feet down some rocks. So 2 things about this. 1, obviously this mountain is fucking dangerous. And 2, even though he got separated and got lost, they were still able to find him relatively quickly. So it's very strange that Carl not only went missing, but that they can't find him. Because accidents happen on this mountain all the time, but usually people are found pretty quickly. Also, I will say you do not have to look far in any case related to Mount Shasta to find rumors and theories about the supernatural. There's actually a lot of speculation about paranormal activity on Mount Shasta. Now, in 2010, a story did emerge about a little boy who went missing from a campsite at the base of the mountain. And according to David Pilati's Missing 411, I think it was the North American and Beyond book that I read, on 10/1 of 2010, the boy would disappear from the family campsite and police would be called. And after 5 hours of searching around 11:30 p.m., he would be found in some bushes right next to the trail that searchers had been using to try to find him. And he would tell a very strange story. He said that his first memory after going missing is walking up to a cave. And inside the cave was a ladder leading up to a bright light. And his grandmother was there, or at least he thought it was his grandmother. But he noticed at one point that there were sparks coming from her head. and assumed that she must be a robot instead. He also said that there were guns and purses hanging on the wall of the cave, and that there were other robots in the cave that weren't moving. He said that the robot was very polite and interested in his tummy, and eventually he woke up in the bushes.
Aliens.
Obviously, that's alien. There's also a lot of UFO sightings in this area. So there was one sighting of what looked like a spaceship over the mountain. And the U.S. Forest Service released a statement saying how humid air masses rising up the side of the volcano can create lenticular clouds that look like a spacecraft. I did look at this picture and it does look like, I mean, it's definitely like in the shape of what a UFO would look like or what we think it looks like, but it is clouds. Like you can tell that it's clouds. There's also the lost city of Telos, which, according to an article in Medium, the legend goes that there is a complex system of tunnels beneath the volcano that lead to the lost city, which is home to the Lemurian civilization. The tale goes that its people argued with the city of Atlantis over ideology, and conflict between these advanced societies escalated to an all out war. And when the dust settled, Atlantis had been destroyed, and the people that survived fled underground. It is believed by some that they are still alive and have become highly evolved humanoids that stand 7 feet tall while wearing white robes and having flowing hair. And it is believed that they generate these clouds to hide their cargo ships. Now, in 1934, a prospector named J.C. Brown was getting ready to head out for an expedition to find a treasure-filled cave that he claimed he had found 30 years earlier inside of Mount Shasta.
Of course, there's always a cave with
I
treasure.
know.
Always a cave with treasure.
He said that the cave was in an underground city that he had found. And on the day that he was to meet up with an 80-member team, he didn't show up and has never been seen again. Yeah, because he made it up.
Yeah.
It is also said that Mount Shasta may be the portal to another dimension. That is the story of Carl Landers, who is still missing.
Yeah, I don't really know what happened to him.
It's pretty crazy.
I think he just went off trail really far.
He had
to
to
go
have gone, he had to have been moving pretty good, though, to get far enough off trail.
True, but also think about how many people go missing for so long.
I know. I do think that him trying to find a spot to use the bathroom could be very likely. And I also think that him getting disoriented and confused could have also caused him to go off of the trail. Because otherwise, there's no reason for him to be leaving the trail. All right. So, yeah, let us know if you have any theories that maybe we didn't think about. All right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're going to head over to our bunker talk and we're going to talk a little bit more about this and probably more about who we think is involved in this. And then we're also going to be doing a little mini on Rosemary as well, which is kind of a crazy one too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, come and check us out on Patreon. If you haven't already, come and support us. We really appreciate it. You guys are amazing. And yeah, we will talk to you soon.
Yep.
Bye.
So, negotiate the correct word?
Yeah.
You're negotiating with the snow?
Yeah. Like to negotiate, to like get through, to climb out, to do all of those things. It's the correct usage.
That's no way.
Yeah, it is.
Negotiate is like talking.
No, you can also negotiate like the road. You can negotiate your way through traffic.
I don't think the road can talk.
Okay, well,
I think that's navigating.
You're not debating with the road. You're negotiating through traffic. It's a correct usage of the word. Look it up.
No. That's stupid. I've never
Why
heard
is that
anyone
stupid?
ever use the word negotiate to describe going through snow.
It makes sense to me.
Okay, use it in a sentence with a real life person in a conversation.
Okay, so
No, I want you to, and then I want to see that person's reaction. Someone's not gonna look.
Actually use it while talking.
And
I have
someone's
used it
not
while talking.
Gonna look at you and be like, okay, whatever.
Like, hey, Cordy, I don't want to have to negotiate my way through your room in order to wake you up in the morning, so you need to clean it.
No, that sounds stupid. That sounds stupid.
It's not.
It does not sound correct.
Oh
at
my
all.
gosh. Oh my gosh.
I want to negotiate my way through this snow. The fuck? I'm not having a conversation with the snow.
You're not debating your way through the snow. Negotiating can be like problem solving, finding a way through, talking a way through. Like negotiate has more than just like negotiating with a terrorist. Like that's how you're thinking of the word. But that's not the only meaning of the word.
Nobody uses it in that way.
I use it.
No, you don't. You have never said that because I would have fucking questioned it because it sounds dumb.
Okay. Negotiate. 1, obtain or bring about by decision.
Okay.
So that would be like negotiating with a terrorist, right?
Yeah.
That would be that.
Yes.
2, find a way over or through an obstacle or difficult path. Example, there was a puddle to be negotiated.
No. It
Yes!
still sounds dumb.
Stop.
Like, it doesn't sound like good English. It sounds like old English. It sounds like some
What?
motherfucker with some dentures is going to be talking to me like that. Like,
Wow.
No.
Wow. You're very judgmental about my verbiage. I don't like it.
Yeah, you're mean to me. I'm going to be judgmental about your verbiage.
Oh my God.
I walk in here tired as fuck, woke up in the morning, and you start taking pictures of me. Yeah, I'm going to make fun of your grammar. I would like anyone else to tell me, have you ever heard the word negotiate be used?
You're going to feel
for
really
going through
dumb when everybody's like, yes, Maddie, we have heard that. I can't believe you haven't heard that.
No.
Oh my God.
I've never heard the word negotiating be used for getting through a physical object, not a person.
This will be a fun one.
You just woke me up. I don't know what you expect. I'm not sure if anybody's awake when they first fucking wake up. Like, I literally just got out of bed.
I feel like I could jump out of bed, and as long as somebody handed me a cup of coffee, I could perform like I had been awake for hours.
If she doesn't have a cup of coffee, she's going to be a very big bitch, though. So, don't let her fool you.
I'm not naturally a morning person. I'm naturally a night owl, so I get it. I do. But yeah. So yeah, Maddie went to Disneyland?
Yeah, Universal Studios.
Yeah, so she went to Disneyland for what, 5 days? You were gone?
Technically, yeah, but we only went to Disneyland for 1 day, and we only went to Universal for 1 day.
What'd you do the rest of the time?
There was only one other day.
Oh, so it was like 3 days and then 2 travel days, kind of?
Yeah, because we flew in late.
Oh.
Our flight was at 5 p.m. on the 1st.
Mm-hmm.
Flew in, got there at like 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm.
Basically went to bed.
Nice.
Got food, went to bed, then woke up, went to Universal, did the Halloween Horror Nights.
Very fun. That's going already?
It starts in mid-September.
Oh, geez. That's too early. I'm sorry.
There are thousands of people that want to go to that. You can't give them like a week.
I don't know.
I hope that's the only one on me because I just felt it biting my fucking foot.
Oh my God. I'm like scared to be sitting next to you.
You should be. I slept with Goose in the bed last night. That's why I have, let me preference. I slept in the bed with my cat who has fleas. Preference. I don't care. I can't ever say it right. I'm not ever going to say it right. Everybody knows what I mean when I say that.
Okay.
Everyone always knows what I mean.
Okay, I apologize. Calm down. You slept with Goose?
I slept with Goose in the bed. He slept on me like this, like laying on me. He was like laying on top of my chest and like slept with me.
Oh my gosh. He was making so much noise this morning in Phoenix's room. And look what he was doing. Do you know how hard it was for him to get into that box?
He had to get into that box.
He was making so much fucking noise.
Trying to jam himself in that box in the cupboard.
A venti matcha lemonade.
Does that make sense?
A venti mocha lemonade.
That would be the most disgusting thing on the planet.
Not till like 11:30. Yeah. All right. Okay, sounds good. So a few minutes ago, Shed texted me and he's like, "Hey, what do you and Maddie want from Starbucks?" Because he's picking up. Not only did he have to go do a dump run today, but he's also picking up my volleyball shirts because we have our first game tomorrow. And so I told him Maddie wants a venti matcha lemonade. And apparently he got to the speaker box and he ordered a venti mocha lemonade. And the barista was like, "Yeah, I don't think that's right."
Thank God for that barista. Thank
So then-
fucking God.
So then he had to call me and have me repeat it so that she could hear it. And then she's like, "Yeah, that makes more sense."
And I hear him. Does that make sense? Is that a drink?
Is that a real drink?